Welcome to the Empowerment Show with Melissa Heisler. Every week, discover new personal choices with practical, inspiring guides. And now, here's Melissa.
Welcome to the Empowerment Show. I'm Melissa Heisler, and it's my life, and it is your life. Live it. Today, I will be talking with Robin Marvel about overcoming childhood abuse. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to have you here because when I saw your website and the positive nature of it and the titles of your books, I had a really hard time correlating that with a very difficult childhood that you had.
Right. That's what a lot of people say, but my childhood actually led me to becoming all that I am today. So even though it was rough, it really was actually lessons in the making.
And can you share a little bit about those lessons? What is it that you had gone through? I know initially there were some difficulties, and then you made some maybe choices that weren't the best for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a really troublesome childhood. There was a lot of domestic abuse, parental kidnappings, drug abuse, like out of control drug abuse. And that led to a lot of homelessness, instability, which in return, I didn't learn a sense of self-worth at all. I really didn't think I was worth anything. So when I was 15, I turned to alcohol and partying because that kind of gave me the validation I thought I was looking for. Even though it was negative, to me, it was attention. And that was something that I'd never had before. And so I really started making my choices based on that. And I ended up pregnant at 16 and had my daughter when I was 17. And then I kind of went back to high school because I said, she's not going to be a statistic. I'm going to do whatever I can do to make sure that she isn't. And I went back to high school, and then I went on to some college. And then when I was about 23, I just kind of lost control again, and I started drinking really heavily. And I wasn't being a good mother, and I wasn't being a good wife. And I looked around at my life one day sitting in my living room, and I just said, you know what, this is not the way my story's going to end. And in that moment, I decided to start making the changes and taking steps towards living my life in an empowered, motivated way.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And if you don't mind, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what happened around 23 when you turned to alcohol again. Because I think what happens is I want to help people understand and relate with your story. I think a lot of times we think we're alone feeling our pain, whether it's things that happen in our childhood. I mean, the thoughts that you were kidnapped and all the abuse that you experienced and the homelessness. I mean, those are tangible things that were happening to you, and we can either succumb to them or to try to remove ourselves from them once we're able. But what happened at 23 where it looked like your life was moving forward? You had a daughter you loved, you had some schooling under your belt. What happened to make you turn away from life?
Well, exactly what happened was I think I've been a grown-up for so long. I mean, I can remember in second grade, my mom was addicted to drugs and stuff, and she was not taking care of us the way she should, in a healthy manner. So I was getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, walking to the school, helping the cook because she was listening to me and she was just my friend. And then I'd go home at 7, wake up my sisters, take them to school. I mean, there was no real parental figure. So I kind of stepped into that role at even a young age of as young as 7. And all of my life, I've taken care of people. I've taken care of my mom. I can remember shoving her in ditches because I overheard the person that had just beat her up say he was going to run her over, and this is in the middle of the night, just a little kid. And so I always had that heaviness of responsibility. And so for me, then I had my own daughter at such a young age, I was taking care of her. And at 23, I just was like, I need a break. I just want to be me. I just want to do what I want. And so the way that I did it was completely irresponsible. And, I don't recommend it for anyone, the behavior that I was having. But I just felt like I had to break free, and sow my wild oats or whatever you want to call it. And that's really what led me to falling back into the alcohol. And I mean, I was drinking every single night. And I think that was because I knew what I was doing was not purposeful. It wasn't what I wanted to be doing, but it was just easier to numb it and stay drunk. And that way I could just deal with it better.
Thank you again for sharing that. I think there's so many people that can relate to what you're saying. You know, their childhoods might not have been as difficult as yours, or maybe they were, but there's so many adults these days who have been adults since they've been 6, 7, 8 years old because they've had to take care of their parents, you know, whether it's their parents were alcoholics or had drug issues, or whether they just weren't able to be parents. There were so many children that have to take care of themselves. And I think that does make them, that they lose that childhood. I think a lot of times they also lose who they are because they're so taking care of everyone else or used to taking that role that they've forgotten who they are. And sometimes they fall into some bad spells like with alcoholism or other ways that they're trying to escape the pain of never having that childhood. So thank you for sharing that experience, because I hope it gives people some understanding, whether they see someone in their life who's going through a rough spell, or to forgive themselves for going through that rough spell, because I think there needs to be that release, hopefully in a positive way, to be a child when you never had that possibility as a youngster.
Well, absolutely. And that's really important that people know that, you know, we make these choices and it doesn't make us bad people the rest of our lives. It means that's where we were at in that moment. And it's okay to forgive yourself. I find that so many people carry that weight around with them, like, oh, I made that mistake and you know, what a bad choice. And I'm such a horrible person. And how do I deserve anything good? And for me, I had to forgive myself in that. You know, looking back on it, I know that I made some crazy choices in that time of my life, but I also know that I needed those moments to grow into the person I am today. And that's helped me to have forgiveness for myself. And I mean, I apologize to the people that I hurt, but I also know that I had to say, you know what, Robin, you made those choices and you need to let go. I know I had to let go and forgive in order to move forward in my life. Otherwise, I would have just stayed miserable in the place that I was at.
Absolutely. And I think it is important for us to forgive ourselves for the choices that we've made. A lot of times we feel that we're trapped and we look either for the easy way out or the numbing way out. And it doesn't excuse the behavior, but if we hold on to guilt about it, it doesn't allow us to move forward. And I think that's so important that, you know, we've already been trapped as youngsters to take responsibility for things. Then if we trap ourselves in guilt, we're still not living. So being able to forgive ourselves is very powerful. So I want to talk a little bit about how, you know, everything you went through and how you felt trapped and restless. How did you change from kind of being stuck in that cycle that happens to many people who go through this? As children of alcoholics, they tend to become alcoholics themselves. How did you break that cycle and turn your life to one of empowerment?
Well, you know, that day when I was sitting in my living room that I was talking about, and I looked around and I said, this is not how my story's going to end, I decided to start making choices that would help me to move forward versus just staying in that same person that I was. I mean, I couldn't look in the mirror and like myself as I was. So I started learning how to love myself, and I started learning about my own self-worth, and I started building on that. And the amazing thing is the more I learned to love myself, the more I valued myself, the less I wanted to be a part of that kind of life. I wanted more for myself, and I think that's the case with everybody. You know, a lot of times we don't learn to love ourselves. We love our kids, we love our spouses, we love whatever, but it's really hard for us to look in the mirror and say, I love you to ourselves, especially if we've been in a negative space before. So for me, I really had to go through that, and I would stand in the mirror and I would say, I love you to myself, and a million negative things would come up about why I shouldn't, and I had to go back, switch them out with positive, and I really had to work hard at that, and that is how I broke the cycle. You know, I see my childhood as lessons. I appreciate what my mom and dad did for me, you know, because they weren't all bad. I mean, they made bad choices and there was a lot of negative, but I know they loved, you know, they were trying their best. And for me, that's helped me with the forgiveness of my childhood too, is being able to look at my mom and my dad and say, you know what, they did what they thought was right in those moments. They were just as wounded as I was, so for me to hold anger towards them is unfair. So I think that that was really how I broke the cycle. I just really looked at it and said, I don't want my girls to grow up like this. I want to like myself. I want to enjoy life. I don't want to struggle. And so I had to work hard. And it did not happen like a flip of a switch. I worked hard. I still work hard every single day to live the life that I choose. And I think that that's really important for people to understand.
I agree with that too. And I think it does start with choice. And a lot of times when we're stuck in that cycle of abuse or that cycle of negativity, that we don't feel like there's any choice. And it really is as simple and as difficult of saying, no, I want a different life, and believing that we have the power to do that. And go ahead.
I just agree with you completely. It is really about making that decision. We have to decide. I think that's the first step in changing anything in our life, is we have to decide what we want to be different, and then we have to take the action.
Absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit more about your process of self-love, because I know I still have negative days where, it's hard to find something that we love about ourselves, or if we've never felt love from someone else, especially from our parents, how do you recapture that feeling, or not recapture, maybe have it for the first time, that feeling of love, of self-love, of being worthy of love?
Well, I think the most important thing is the self-love, because even though we want all of this love from outside sources, no matter how much we get from our parents or anybody else, if we don't love ourselves, then we're really never going to feel complete, and we're going to keep searching for that. And I think that's what happens in a lot of situations. And for me, I still have, I have days where I wake up and I might be a little bit off, and I have to remind myself that I only have 24 hours today. And this is honestly what I do. I will say to myself, Robin, you have 24 hours today. Are you seriously going to waste it being in a negative space, or are you going to shift it? And then I start shifting it, and it might take an hour, it might take 20 minutes. It just depends on the day. But I don't want to waste any of my time here, because life is short. I don't want to waste any of that time being in a negative space. So for me, I guess I just value myself and thinking, you know what, you are worth a good day. You are worth a positive experience. You are worth loving yourself. And that's really what's changed my life, is being able to put things in perspective like that.
That is really powerful. And I think it's so important to see the value of our life. I think we get stuck in the negativity and get stuck in the difficulties. But as children of survivors of abuse, they are so strong. They have survived so much. They have so much power. And if they start turning that power towards giving themselves self-love and choosing to live their life, I know that they can come out of the hole. They can come out of that depression. They can come out of that cycle. They have the strength to do it. They just need the belief that they're able to do it. And I love your motivator of, I only have 24 hours in the day. I don't want to waste them. I heard, and hopefully this isn't a morbid quote, but I heard a quote the other day of, we're all dying of a terminal disease. I mean, at the end of this life, we all die. So, for me, that was really powerful, because it's like, yeah, my time here is limited. I don't know how limited or how long, but it's all going to end the same way, so we might as well make the most of the time that we have.
Absolutely. And, I wanted to mention that some people, you're talking about children, survivors of abuse and things like that. Sometimes they don't know that they can break out of these cycles. Like sometimes we get so stuck in what we know, right? Like firsthand know, that we don't we don't understand that we're able to break that cycle and step out of that life, because it's all we've ever seen. It's all we've ever been a part of. So it's comfortable. It's easy. It's easier to say, oh yeah, I'm an alcoholic because my dad was an alcoholic. And then society jumps in and goes, oh yeah, you know, that guy, that makes perfect sense that he's an alcoholic because his dad was an alcoholic. So we start making these victims, or not, I don't want to say making them, empowering the victimization of their childhood. And what we need to do is stand up and say, you know what? It doesn't matter what your mom did, what your dad did, what your childhood was, what your 20s were like. It matters what you choose to do right now in this moment. You're in control. Because a lot of people don't know that. It's surprising to me when I talk to someone and they're like, oh, you know, like my husband has a niece who was over, and I said something about the things that I was doing and moving forward. And this was like a couple years ago. And she was like, oh, well, you could move forward and, you know, have a powerful life, but I could never do that. I'm from Hersey, which is the small town we live in. And to me, that was so shocking that she was so quick to limit herself based on where she was born. You know, so I think that it's so important to tell people that we're in negative situations. You are not a victim unless you choose to be. Being a victim is your choice, because you can stand out of it and be a victor.
That is such a powerful speech. I hope people can hear that speech, because just the idea of empowering victimhood of our childhood. And I don't want to play the blame game here, because I think so much of it is unconscious. You know, somehow, like the story with your niece, somehow she got planted the idea that her town is small and nobody from her town does anything. And so she's consciously or unconsciously adapted that thought. A lot of children who have experienced abuse, they consciously or unconsciously accept that this is how life is and that there's nothing else they can reach to. And so just changing that viewpoint, just removing that blocker, can open up a world of opportunities. Now, it's still a lot of hard work and focus to get there, but you first need to remove the blocks and boundaries in order to get there.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk a little bit more about your past here, and then we're going to move into the work that you're doing. And we might have covered or touched on this a little bit, but I thought something really powerful about you is that if you could live your entire childhood over again, the difficult childhood you had, the abductions, living, you know, being homeless, that you would choose the same childhood. Can you tell us a little bit about why you would make that choice?
Well, you know, this is the number one question I get asked, what you just asked me, and I absolutely would choose the same childhood. And not because it was, I mean, there were parts of it that were fun, but the traumatic parts of it were hard and were rough for a little kid, and I've had to overcome a lot of things because of my childhood. But you know what? All of those experiences, all of the kidnappings, all of the abuse, all of the drugs, the alcohol, the teen pregnancy led me to be who I am today. And how amazing is that I get to share all of my story with people who have been there or have went through different situations, and I can say, you know what? I've been there. I'm hand up. Let me share with you what I went through and how I broke out of it. And all of that is because of the childhood I lived. So I absolutely would experience all of that again. Was it a childhood I'd give to my own children? No. But for me, it's made me that much more powerful in being a mother and in being a speaker and an author and just being a person in the world. And so I cannot not be grateful for that experience.
That is so powerful, especially in this culture of victimhood, that it would be very easy for you to say, no, I'd never want to do it again, and it was the most horrible thing in my life, and I don't want anybody else to go through it, which maybe that last part is true. But to be able to see that this was actually what defined who you are, that defined what your purpose is now and your gifts are to the world and to those around you. It is very empowering to, instead of looking at the things that happen to us as attacks and simply things that are bringing us down, but instead to see that by us making it through it or rising above it has made us and empowered us to be who we are.
Absolutely. And that can be so freeing when you're able to pull the lessons out of these experiences, negative or positive in your life. Then you're able to let go and keep what you need and let go of anything that's weighing you down.
Absolutely. And And talking about things weighing you down, I wanted to talk about your new book, which is called Life Check, 7 Steps to Balance Your Life. And so it helps people to be able to keep in check, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. My new book is really about taking action and rocking that boat of life. You know, stuck in these routines and we're just going through the motions and we're not really living. And then once we decide that we want to really live, we don't know what steps to take to start really living. And so for me, writing this book was all about that, all about getting people off their couch and getting them active participant in the empowerment of their lives. And so I really love this book because it's short, sweet, to the point. I'm not a fluff writer. I'm all about let's get this done. Let's give some real, actual things that are completely free to do and that you can do in your own daily living that can change your life. And so it's just been a really great experience.
So can you give us the Reader's Digest of what are those 7 steps to help us balance our life?
They are rock the boat, leave your baggage, raise the bar, push the limits, setting life in motion, lose sight of the shore, and live today to create tomorrow.
So it sounds like a lot of risk taking, a lot of letting go, and a lot of taking that big leap forward.
Well, absolutely, and that's what you really need to do. You know, the first chapter, Rock the Boat, is about finding the real you. You know, when you shed all of the labels of being a mom or a dad or your business label and all of the you know, all of these wife labels and husband labels and finding who you really are. And then it's about, you know, I always, in the book, I talk about how when we start out in life, we're like this inflated balloon. We have all of these great ambitions and hopes and dreams, and we're really being powerful in our life. And then we start experiencing negative experiences, and they're like little pinholes in our balloon, right? And we start to deflate. And the purpose of the book is to be to tape up those little pinholes and reinflate your balloon of life. And I think that that's just a really great way so we can go back out into the world powerful and inspired and motivated and just really take action to live the life that we desire.
And again, it takes courage to be able to do that, to be able to patch up those holes, to be able to do, because there is some heavy lifting, to be able to forgive and accept our past so that we can move forward and take those risks.
Yeah, and that's what Leave the Baggage is really about. You know, we're so hard on ourselves. We can be compassionate and forgiving to our friends, to our children, to strangers, but we are so hard on ourselves and we just want to punish ourselves for anything that we've done that we perceive as bad or negative. And it's just so important to look at yourself and go, you know what? I did that. It's okay that I did that. This is where I was at that point in my life. And now I'm ready to let go and just release that baggage and leave it at the baggage claim, right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of survivors of abuse, a lot of children of alcoholics, letting go of that baggage is difficult because they've felt responsible for so long. They felt like they need to take care of everything. They need to resolve everything. And to be able to forgive and accept and let go is both a very difficult process because it's a whole new way of being, but it's also so powerful to release all those years of taking responsibility for what was not ours and to be able to then see that we can create our own life, that we don't have to take care of someone else's. So it's a very, very powerful step.
Well, you know, it really is. And it's kind of, what's important is separating yourself from your parents' choices. Because like you're saying, you know, we take a lot of responsibility for the situations we were in as kids, but we didn't have much choice when we were a child. We have choice now. And so to take and separate ourselves and say, you know, this is my life now. I can't change the past. I can't go back and fix it. I can't make it any different whatsoever, no matter how mad I am at myself now, no matter how much I punish myself now, no matter how much I grieve over what happened in the present. I can't change it, what had happened. So I need to separate myself from it and search for the lesson. I'm telling you, that can be so freeing if you look at something you went through and go, what did I learn from it? What did I learn from that horrible night of domestic abuse in the front yard from my mom? You know, what did I gain from that? And when you're able to really look at it from the outside looking in, you can gain perspective and realize that's not who you are now. You don't have to keep that attached to you. You know, you're carrying it around like a boulder in a backpack. You're just that heaviness. And once you're able to let go of that, you can really feel a sense of freedom and start working on your self-worth and building your own life right now with your choices you're making in the present.
That's so powerful. And what's so powerful about it is by seeing each thing that happens to us not as a negative attack that keeps us down, but as a lesson that propels us either in the moment or later in life. I think that's where the empowerment comes from, is that we're then empowered to use this knowledge, either not to repeat it ourselves, or we can look at it as, you know what, from that moment forward, that's where I decided to make a different life for myself, or whatever the message was for us in that difficulty, that there's a piece of knowledge that it was hard earned, but it's a piece of knowledge that we can keep with us and can bring it into our current life, and both can help our lives be better and hopefully be an inspiration to those around us.
Absolutely. Use it for something positive always.
Well, you have a very powerful book. I think you have a great message for people. Where can people